Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Rapid Review. Appreciate everybody joining live. I know this is a little different from usual. Normally, we are doing these on Saturday mornings. Busy weekend, so getting this in on a Friday night, late Friday night here in New York. Hopefully, everybody else has some good stuff going on this weekend. But yeah, appreciate everybody joining live. Like I said, we're going to be going through everything that went on in the overall market, leading industry groups, look at some charts, just get everybody ready to trade for next week. So, as always, without further ado, it's time for the Rapid Review. All right. So, as always, there's a disclaimer. You know the deal. Educational, informational purposes only, not financial, investment, or trading advice. Read through the whole thing. But again, you guys know the deal. All right. Current state of the market direction uptrend and a power trend. Very clearly an uptrend and a power trend. Looking at distribution days, we have 3 distribution days on the S&P, 1 distribution day on the NASDAQ. The big thing here, major changes. First off, I've been saying this last couple of weeks, IBD is showing slightly different than I am. It's a volume thing, different volume sources for the indexes showing up volume, down volume, resulting in some slight distribution differences based on the rules. So it doesn't change much on my outlook to the market. It hasn't changed much on my outlook to the market for the week, but we're pretty close to the same. So I just always wanted to start off with that. But all right, we'll start off with the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ didn't have as much change. The NASDAQ on Tuesday, we lost the 10-10, which was that big tariff Trump China kind of drama day drop. We dropped that day off, but we did gain a day on Tuesday due to some stalling action, which you can see right here on the 1028 right there. Thursday, we lost the 925 distribution day, which dropped off 2. And for my count, that's leaving us here at 3. 2 regular distribution days, 1 stalling day. NASDAQ, major changes. Major changes. So the NASDAQ started off this week with 6 total distribution days. As you can see, we're down to 1. But this day was actually gained this week. So we completely wiped out all the distribution that we had starting off in the week. The first day was Monday. Monday, we dropped a total of 3 distribution days. That was the September 25th, the 10-10, and the 10-14 days. All 3 of those due to price action. 5% above the close of that distribution day. We did that intraday, wiping those days out. Tuesday, we follow up, drop off another 2 distribution days, 923, 1022. Both dropped off due to price action. And then Wednesday, just to cap it off, getting rid of that 6th distribution day, 10-3 gone again due to price. Every single one of those 6 distribution days, 5% or greater move intraday, wiped all of them out. So really strong action, wiping out all the distribution. But on Thursday, we did gain 1 distribution day down on volume, and we'll see that when we look at the charts. But yeah, super powerful week. Just basically eliminating all distribution days on the NASDAQ. Going into next week, though, really the only thing I'd see is this possibility, if we get a really strong week on the NASDAQ, that we drop the 10-16 day off. If we can get like a, somewhat of a decent move, there's a possibility to drop that off due to price action. Looking at the week, clear leader this week was the NASDAQ, no doubt about it, up 2.24%, S&P up 0.71%, Dow up 0.75%. And again, year, NASDAQ leading it out, 22.86%, S&P 16.3%, Dow up 11.8%. Green all around, really positive, NASDAQ clearly being the leader for the year. Moving averages, as you can see on the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow, all green, all sitting properly. Pulling a little in tighter on these. We were very high off of the 10 and 21 last week. And we're starting to kind of, even though we had some really strong moves, we're starting to kind of get things to pull into each other a little bit on the S&P and the Dow. So overall, positive action. Russell, below the 10, but not too concerning there. All right, let's jump over and take a look at the indexes. We always start off on the daily on the NASDAQ, so let's do that as we always do. All right, last week, we finished off, this was that Friday, the 24th. We finished off really, really strong, closing near the highs for the week, getting to those all-time highs, breaking out of the sideways chop area. And the big question was, can we hold those highs? Can we follow through and see more strength come into this market, showing that this uptrend really, truly is here to stay? Or at the very least, could we get some tight sideways action? As you can see, the question was answered. We had a ton of follow through, probably more than many of us had expected. Super, super strong week. You could see basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Huge gap up on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, we continued to climb, make those all-time highs. Way more powerful than I think a lot of us expected us to come out of this sideways chop and just shoot skyrocket higher. Really, really interesting to see how strong that move was. Thursday, we have that distribution day that came in as we pulled back. And then we had today, we had a gap up. We closed up for the day, but closing near the lows for the day inside of Thursday's kind of intraday action. So overall, super, super powerful week. Thing that I did like is that we at least were able to maintain above those Thursday lows on Friday. We didn't actually test anything there. So it looks like we're possibly creating a short-term higher low, which is very, very positive to see that action right there. But this is overall healthy, right? We've had such a strong move. We had these 5 up days in a row. We pulled off of those moving averages, got really, really extended. We pulled back in, but we didn't pull back in very much, right? We had one down day. We kind of then had a day, up a little bit, but more sideways. And we hopefully tighten up around here, allow things to maybe catch up a little bit, things to get a little bit of a breath with how far and quick we moved, and then continue onward from there. So this kind of end of the week, very, very healthy action considering how strong this market had moved. Really just ideal. If you're long, this was just really an ideal look for what this week looked like, 100%. Let's look at the weekly quick. You have the weekly. We closed in the 43.91% range. Again, would have liked it to be a little bit higher, but being how strong that we had moved, not too concerning there. If we can just kind of tighten up because of how far we gapped out and how we also finished strong last week. So not too concerning. Would obviously like to be closing in the upper range, but I don't think there's anything that I'm going to say we need to be concerned about, as I said. And volume was, it's not shown here, but volume was up for the week as well, which is positive. All right, key levels, upside, all-time highs, pretty clear, right? Hold above Thursday lows. If we're going to continue on the upside, if we can really hold above these Thursday lows, that's going to be really, really positive. Maybe we kind of go sideways, tighten up, let these moving averages catch up, things digest a little bit, and then skyrocket higher would be ideal. Market doesn't always give us what we want, but just an ideal look at what we'd like to see. On the downside, 10-day simple moving average. This 10-10 high, really, really keeping an eye on that. And then obviously the 21, those are both coinciding about the same point. So this is a major, major level right here that we want to maintain above and just not fall back into this choppy sideways action that we were there. Then we have the 50-day and then the 10-10 low, which also corresponds with the 925 low. That's, if we get below this point, create a lower low, most of us, I think, are going to be probably sitting in cash and things are going to be pretty brutal. So, yeah, that's just to kind of look at what things could happen on the upside, the downside. We talked about the sideways action, but I think ideally for the overall trend, always maintaining above the 21 EMA, maintaining above this 10-10 high, chop around here. We could do whatever we got to do, but I think that's all kind of healthy as long as we continue to create higher lows. This low, I know I mentioned staying above that. That's just very, very short term. We could take that out. That's not too concerning. S&P, let's take a quick look there. Like we had mentioned, not as strong, but very similar action, right? We still trended up. Wednesday, Thursday, the Wednesday wasn't as strong as we were down for the day, but pretty much very, very similar action. Not much else to say there. There you have the weekly. All right, so let's take a jump over. Take a look at the themes. What's going on with the themes? As you guys know, or most of you know, I am a Deepvue partner. This is the tool I use for all my stock screening, all my chart analysis, all my fundamental analysis. Love this tool. It is amazing, especially for things like this, which is the theme tracker. We got 1 week, 1 month, 3 month, year to date. You can see how everything is sitting right now. Big thing this week, Bitcoin miners weren't really that strong last week. They kind of returned. As you can see, this just strength straight across the board. But this week in particular, last week wasn't as good, and they returned with some strength here. Then you have your solar, telecom, semiconductors, really, really strong here. Growth stocks. I know a lot of people ask what is in growth stocks. You can click on it right there. You can get a gist of some of the names in there. What is constituted under that growth stock. Quantum, AI, biotech, these three very, very popular names. Seeing a lot of these on my screeners. Showing some strength this week as well. Cybersecurity in there, kind of held up. Did pretty decent, especially with a couple names. But overall, I mean, just you're getting a quick glance at what's going on. I think we all know what this market is. This is the AI market. If it's tied to AI, it's probably doing well. Like I said, we were having biotech also do pretty well in there. But yeah, for the most part, AI, Bitcoin, crypto, stuff like that, whether it is directly related to that or whether it is, as they say, the old picks and shovels type of thing that's supporting that movement, you're seeing strength in there. So nothing else to say here. What we'll do, let's talk exposure levels real quick before we get into some stocks. Look, this one's going to be pretty straightforward. If you're 100% invested as I am, this is the kind of market you want to be 100% invested in. There's names breaking out. There's names looking strong. There's things going on runs. 100% invested is something I think many people will find themselves in, especially gaining some exposure this week. The big things, earnings. Use caution. A lot of names reporting earnings. Actually, we'll jump real quick back to Deepvue. If you look at, I have a screener. This grabs like some of my big macro screens. So out of like, let's say 500-600 names, a bunch of different screens that I could possibly run. There's 135 names actually reporting next week. So yeah, we're right in thick earnings season. So be aware of if any of the stocks that you actually own, if those are reporting, you want to be aware of that and you want to have a plan going into it. But also be aware if you are, let's say in semiconductors and you have AMD reporting, that could make a pretty big effect on your stock, even though it's not the same one. Some of these big players will affect just the overall industry depending on how the results come out. So keep that in mind too. Don't just look at the names that you're following, names that you own. The names that are the big players in those industries could also have a effect on the overall group. All right. Other than that, let's talk stocks. So I got a couple of stocks that were mentioned. Go back to Deepvue. Shout out to Discord for throwing a couple of these names to me. There you go. Now you guys can see everything I own. Yep. All right. Let's talk. The first name that was brought up, and this is a shout out to Carlos, both these names. He wanted to look at Open. All right, Open Door. Let's see. First, we'll look at the weekly IPO. So even though there's some overhead right here, it doesn't really concern me, right? This is very common in that IPO, early couple 3 years of the IPO. What is beautiful is just this insane ton of volume pulling in here. Super, super powerful move. Clearly coming off those bottoms, like starting that stage 2 uptrend as Stan Weinstein would be looking at. Breaking through this sideways here, taking out these 2 highs. Really, really, really positive action to see that. Let's now look. You can see the fundamentals on here. The annual earnings, not too great. The quarterly earnings down here on the bottom. You know, sales not the right home route. Earnings okay. Institutional sponsorship kind of declining. Don't like to see that quarter after quarter. Something to take note of. A high ATR stock, right? 20-day, 9.46. High ATR stock over here. Relative strength in last month has been but in the last 12 months to the 3 months, ASs, basically comparing to all the stocks in this database, looking very strong. So, but what we are seeing here on the daily is really, really nice flagging action, right? We talked about that coming in from these bottoms, having a super strong, powerful move. Even if I just grab right around to here, look at that. That is insane. Look, this is a small stock. I'm not gonna lie, right? They're at $7.77 in terms of a stock, but massive, massive move coming off these under $1 lows. And now we're kind of flagging. We're holding above. We held above that 50-day simple moving average. We've kind of declined down in here. We've seen what looks like some sort of kind of like contraction as we're starting to tighten up from these peaks and these troughs. We are right where these moving averages are all kind of condensing on each other. And let's see, even if I go to the 50, we're still about 10% off of the 50, give or take. But we're just seeing a little bit of volatility contraction in here as this kind of flags out. Love it. Keep in mind, this is a smaller stock. So these things could be, as you can see, with the ATR, a little more volatile. But yeah, I mean, looking at, that you could do. That's not what I want to do. I'm clicking all over the place. Can't really draw from here, but looking at this downtrending line, right? 1, 2, 3, starting to tighten up. I think you can use that downtrending line as a possible area to break an entry. Oops, jeez, sorry, it's very, very late in New York over here. Not very late for me, but late in general. It's about 10:20. All right, there we go. So you have. Just clean this up so it looks a little visual. You have this downtrending line. You have this prior high. The big thing here, though, just keep in mind that from here to here is 20%, right? So even though this looks super, super tight, this is one of those things I want people to be aware of, that there is some still from this breakout from this here to the low is still about a 20% move. So keep that in mind. But this is, Carlos, I see what you're looking at, right? I like this. I like how it's trending with these moving average, holding above the 50, tightening up. Just understand it's a higher ATR stock, understand it's a smaller name, and kind of adjust your risk accordingly. Big thing right here, though, we got earnings. Earnings is going to be on the 6th, which is sometime next week. What's the exact day? 6th is on Thursday. All right, so earnings are reporting on Thursday. A name like this, I'm not touching this thing. I'm not coming near this thing prior to earnings, because a high ATR stock like this could just completely get decimated, so keep that in mind. All right, and there he is, Chad the man. Brian, let's see, you want to, sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of this. There we go. Brian wants to look at AMSC. Let's see. All right, American Semiconductor Corp. I think a lot of you probably have seen this name. All right, I don't know why I drew this on here. Might be an accidental. Yeah, so we are in that semiconductor space, right? So we're playing into those themes. We see those annual earnings looking strong over here. The quarterly also looking strong, triple digit. Very strong annual quarterly sales, institutional sponsorship pouring in. 12-month strength looking good, not as great on the shorter time frames. Another, everybody loving the high ATR stocks, loving those high ATR stocks. So we got the 8.90% on the ATR. ROE not too great, but overall, I mean, this name in and of itself is definitely fundamentally a very, very strong name. We have that nice strong uptrend, riding that moving average. Just trying to see grand scheme of things where we're at. So just get a visual on that. But I mean, needless to say, we're starting that, again, same in that kind of realm of starting that stage 2 uptrend. Looking at this. Very similar action, right? The big upward move. This one not as insane. But what is that? 370%-ish move. We've now tightened up. We've now started to bounce around these moving average, pretty much respecting, besides the shakeout here, respecting that 50-day. and moving sideways. So now from here, right, the bulk of our move is between here. Oops, not that one. Bulk of our highs and our lows are between here and here. Like, I'm not counting this. The majority is around this area. We're starting to see some inside days, maybe just outside of an inside day. We're starting to see things tighten up. This pattern, just this sideways action, very, very positive. What's the depth on this thing about look like? Yeah, not too big on depth. The big thing here, though, again, and this is honestly what we're going to fall into a lot with what's going on over the next couple of weeks, and I see it myself with a lot of the names that I come across and I like the setups, is we have earnings coming up. Am I buying a stock, especially again with a high ATR, even if it breaks out prior to earnings? Am I buying a name like this close to earnings, days before earnings? Absolutely not. I don't foresee, like, I know the ATR, like technically we can have a 2-day move and I could be in 10%, but in a volatile name right before earnings, very often right before earnings, you see people just kind of sitting back and waiting and not much trading going on because they want to see how the reaction to earnings goes. So I love this setup. I like the industry. I like the fundamentals, but we got earnings, so just keep an eye on that. So Brian, I appreciate you sharing that one. Chad, you had another one. What was the other one? RMBS. Okay, Rambus. Let's take a look. 2023, crazy strength. Died out a little bit, but still positive growth overall. Earnings, we're seeing good earnings. Pretty stagnant, slight uptick in the funds. 6.64 ATR, so not as high of an ATR stock. Quarterly, that's what I'm looking at. Quarterly, last quarter kind of sucked. We got good sales there. Oops, clicking all over the place. All right, so uptrend. Just getting the macro. All right, this thing's been trending up. I'm sure a lot of people know this name. Big uptrend. And now we kind of had, going back to end of September, we had this kind of cup form. We had like this kind of breakout. Now we're kind of forming what I call, and what a lot of people call this, like higher handle, right? We broke out, shook out. Now we're kind of like in this, I don't even know if it's really technically a handle you want to call that, but whatever. We're off of those highs from here. I see what you're looking at. I would like to see this just act a little tighter and a little more uniform and less choppy, right? It's just chopping around a little bit over here. Maybe tighten up and then either give a nice tight inside day right before maybe popping over into a breakout, or possibly just seeing it tighten up and then break out back into this range. Yeah, shorter base. Yeah, short depth, uptrend, possibly giving us an opportunity to get into this. So, yeah, for me, it's just, can we tighten up a little bit and then maybe get back above these all-time high into this break out of this like kind of cup pattern. All right, what other names? So I had a couple names that I'd thrown that I was going to bring up just in case nobody brought anything up. Again, as you can see, a lot of earnings. The one that had reported already is Comfort Systems, FIX. This has been a winner. It's gone on a really nice big run. It gapped up on earnings, and now we're kind of flagging out on this earnings gap. And this is what I like. We have low 950, low 951. All right, so we're maintaining this low on this earnings gap, which I think is very, very positive. We are basically fluctuating within 7% in this earnings gap. So I really like this. I like that today we were able to hold above that low. We had this really strong gap up on earnings. We're seeing the volume dry up in this flagging. The question is, how long does this flag out before this kind of breaks higher? I don't think there's anything wrong if somebody was to buy today or close to these lows, because I would say if we take out that gap up low, that's your stop, right? So if you're right here down to that low, like you're talking 2% loss possibly. I mean, unless you rip through it, but you set a stop like a 2% loss. So I really, really like this kind of setup where we get this gap up, we kind of go sideways for a while, we test. I like how we've tested those lows and then kind of came back up. Would you buy after earnings would you buy after earnings when it base on fix? So Brian, are you just saying would I buy this area right here, like in this pattern? Is that what you're asking? And if that's a question, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Is like a name like this that's been very, very strong uptrend, big gap on earnings, volume increasing, volume tightening up, holding above those lows, giving a super, super tight area where I can define my risk. Like if I break this low, I want out of this. And I could have a 2% stop on something like this. I love this. Now it is extended, right? So, but that's what happens when earning gap up. So if that was your question, hopefully that answers it. So this is a name that I'm fully invested right now, but I have been watching and kind of debating on moving some stuff around or possibly going slightly on margin to grab a name like this, but the market was just so extended, so I was trying not to go on margin. But I digress. So again, Brian, hopefully that answers your question. But again, a lot of these other names that I'm looking at have earnings coming up, which I love about Deepvue. You got the red ones, which means within a week. The gray ones are just a little closer. But buy. Yeah, I have no problem buying after it gaps up, as long as I have a place that I can put my risk. Like I said, I love that it gapped up. It tested those lows and it's held above those lows, and now I just have a really, really tight defined stop. I don't care how far that it's gapped up. It's just, can I put my stop somewhere logically and assess my risk? And if we break below that, I wouldn't want to own this stock anyway. So that's a tight risk that I like to have. But yeah, so you have all these earnings. You can see them all here. What I like about what we're seeing here, right? Some of these past leaders doesn't necessarily mean they're going to lead again. They led a couple months ago, but we're seeing some patterns form. App, which was a stock that I had owned and made some money off of, coming into the 50, starting to pattern, starting to tighten up on the right hand, holding below those moving averages. This name, which I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, PRPO, Precipo, however you want to word that. This is another name that I've been watching that has, yeah, no problem, Brian. Made a really, really strong move up. Let's look at it on the weekly, actually. So we have, like I told you guys, it's a little late for me, my bad. All right, so this was a huge move through this bull market this year, and now we've kind of flagged out over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. But we didn't pull back that much. It's like 30%, which is pretty good. So not really a true high tight flag, but just flagging pattern in general. Jumping over here though now and looking at this. Get this to work. There we go. We have this volatility contraction. Big dip here, another dip, and now we're kind of really tightening. You're seeing the volatility just tighten. High ATR stock, 8.60. But I just like how we're tight right below that breakout level. Technically, you could probably, no, not double bottom, but everybody kind of sees what I'm looking at, right? You're just looking at this flat action, this volatility contracting. We're getting really close below those all-time highs, and I like this little pop of volume that we see in here. Volume drying up around here and tightening. So like the looks of this name. To be honest, it's just a healthcare provider, and I know healthcare is also another industry that's been doing really well too. So if I'm going to play the healthcare industry, I would like this, but again, earnings. Giga Cloud, another one, smaller name, big run up, kind of getting this there's kind of flagging out right here as this descending, I would call it somewhat of a descending triangle, moving averages all converging. Ended off the week with this nice inside day. But again, earnings coming up. Oklo, another big name that I wanted to get into, never got into, looking like it's consolidating, keeping an eye on that, tightening up around those moving averages. Quantum, everybody wanted to be in Quantum. I'm so pissed because I drew this right around here, right? We had this big VCP, and could have easily have entered even just on this breakout. Could have probably entered. Really, that breakout was probably, this breakout day was probably the day to get in there, and the thing just ripped a total of 200%. But yeah, so I mean, this thing completely took off. Doesn't mean that it came from this big consolidation. This could just be the start of it. So keeping an eye on this one, reporting CoreWeave, another one of those names that has an IPO base that just ripped. Now starting to really consolidate, starting to hold up those moving averages, contract. Keeping an eye on this as well. And Wolf, another one that's gone on a big run. Not really consolidating, but just watching this tight action if there's some sort of tight entry, because these really, this is kind of in that Bitcoin mining type of area. If one of these can contract, the Hut's another one, which I blew this trade, as many of you know. If they can really tighten up and give a secondary entry, as you can see, I had bought somewhere in here and then I bought and sold for something else. What else we got? Chad. Yeah, I was gonna buy RGTI at 13. Would have been a 200 bagger at 13. Let's see. To be honest, I can't remember what those prices were. Oh yeah, so you're looking 13. There was 13 back here. Guessing way back here. Yeah, look, you could say, no, I'll be honest, buying at that 13 area, you would have probably been sitting in for a couple months going sideways. So likely you would not have held if you would have bought at 13. Most people would have sold out, especially with how much was looking so strong during this time frame. But I see what you're saying. Don't worry about what you could have had. Yeah, I am more, and I would be, if I was you, more aggravated if you told me, oh, I was looking to break through like I was with this 1810, and I just didn't, and I didn't buy it, and we all see where it went. All right, well, pretty good turnout for a late. I know it's later in New York. Everybody on the West Coast is probably thinking it's not that late, but for me, it's coming up on 11 o'clock. So, great turnout though. I appreciate everybody. Hopefully we got to a lot of people's questions. We got to a bunch of stocks. Yeah, that's all we got. So, all right, let's just end this off. There you guys have it. YouTube. There's the X, there's the YouTube link. If you are looking for Discord, which my boy Chad and a couple other people are from, you have the link in the YouTube description. And then on X, just shoot me a message. And I'll get it to you. A couple people have done that. I find that to be the easiest. Or you can just find the YouTube channel, and you can also see it in that description as well. You also have my email. You can shoot me an email and just say, hey, send me the Discord link. I'll send it to you that way as well. But yeah, other than that, look, final thoughts on this market. It's strong. It's healthy. Earnings seasons. Be cautious. Focus on those leaders. Don't chase anything. There'll be plenty of stocks to buy. That's all I got. Other than that, stay disciplined, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.